What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and welcome to another episode of World of Warcraft Dungeon Overview. This episode will be starting off the instances that were released with the Dragon Soul raid, thus beginning the end of our run through Cataclysm. I'll be guiding you through this mess of a time leap with my druid you see here, as well as my paladin in order to get around the lockout timer. So with that being said, let's dive straight into it. With almost all of his lieutenants and generals now defeated, all that remains is for us to take down the aspect of death himself, Deathwing. Of course, this is no simple feat, as countless armies and powerful beings over the course of Azeroth's history have tried and failed. What hope could we possibly have? The answer? None. At least not without some creative thinking. The bronze dragon aspect, Nozdormu, devised a plan to travel back in time to the climax of the War of the Ancients to retrieve the Dragon Soul, also known as the Demon Soul. This artifact has a whole lot of lore tied to it, and I'd recommend reading the Day of the Dragon novel as well as the War of the Ancients trilogy to get a better understanding of what we're dealing with here. But the gist of it is that the Dragon Soul is a powerful artifact created by Deathwing thousands of years ago, harnessing the powers of demon souls trapped inside the golden disc, as well as a fragment of most dragons throughout the world. It has changed hands a few times over the years, going from Deathwing to the original Orcish Horde to the Wizard Ronin, before eventually being destroyed around the time of the Second War. Harnessing the power of the Dragon Soul could give us the edge we need against the Worldbreaker, but it's not quite as simple as traveling back in time to when it existed. A powerful entity living outside the natural timelines is blocking our path going backwards, meaning that we'll have to travel to a possible future to confront whoever is standing in our way. With the aid of the bronze Dragonflight, Nozdormu especially, we've traveled to a future version of Dragonblight where Deathwing had succeeded in bringing about the destruction of the world, leaving everything we know turned to ash. End Time is a level 85 heroic dungeon located in the Caverns of Time dungeon hub on the eastern side of Tanaris. By this point I'd hope you'd know how to get to this area, and there should even be some portals available to you at this point, bringing you directly to the entrance to the caverns below. Once you make your way down to the main concourse, take your first right to find a grouping of 3 instances, 2 dungeons and 1 raid entrance, where the portal you'll be looking for will be the first one on your left. It's also worth noting that the world map is extremely useful down here, just in case you get confused. Quick disclaimer, I'm not going to be going through all of the basic character lore for the first 4 bosses in this dungeon, just because they're all major characters that could have a 30+ minute video dedicated just to them. Instead, I'll just be focusing on what happened to these former heroes to turn them down such a dark path in this alternate universe. If you've ever kept up with Cataclysm lore, you'll likely recall that Baine Bloodhoof has been through a lot. He lost his father, Cairn, to Garrosh Hellscream in an honorable duel turned sour. He was forced to fight tooth and hoof to regain his city from usurpers, and has had to deal with Garrosh becoming the new war chief of the Horde. Through all of this, Baine has kept his tongue in check, keeping his reservations to himself, though you can only begin to imagine what kind of stress that is putting on the young chieftain. In this timeline, when the world failed to fend off Deathwing's assault, Baine's psyche was shattered, leaving only a husk of guilt and rage. It doesn't do our morale good to take down one of the most honorable warriors out there, but we need to keep moving, and he's in our way. The way this dungeon works is that of the first 4 bosses, you'll only have to face 2. From there, the final boss will always be the same, but you'll face the first 2 randomly out of the pool of 4 potential encounters. Just walk over to the portal machine and click on whatever dragon shrine it offers to teleport you to. Specific locations will be for specific bosses. Baine is located within the Obsidian Dragon Shrine, with a few groups of black dragons located immediately in front of the portal machine. Just clear those out and hop on over to where the boss is. The tricky part for this fight is going to be positioning for the most part, with a little game of catch going on the side. You'll notice that the entire boss arena is located on a bed of lava, with only a few rocky platforms for you to stand on. Obviously, you don't want to stand in the fire, but you also don't want Baine to go in there either, because he'll ignite his weapon, dealing a shit ton of extra fire damage to anyone that comes into contact with him. The fun part is that the boss will occasionally cast Pulverize on a random player, destroying the platform they were standing on. Just get to safety and kite Baine back onto dry land as quickly as possible to ensure you don't wipe to an angry flaming Tauren. The last little bit is probably going to be something for the ranged DPS or healers to worry about, which is that Baine will throw his totem to a random player, knocking them back. You can actually try to throw this totem back to the boss, which will increase the damage he takes for 20 seconds. This is the best chance you'll have to burst him down and get out of this literal hellhole as quickly as possible. In the aftermath of the final battle with the aspect of death, Jaina Proudmoore's being was destabilized, the spectre infused with the fragments of her staff once belonging to her beloved teacher Antonidas. Though torn she may be, the shade of Jaina hasn't lost her magical prowess one bit. This is going to be tough no matter how you approach it. Jaina can be found in the Azure Dragon Shrine, though she won't be around when you first enter the area. Nozdormu will appear and tell you to collect the fragments of Jaina's staff located around the crater. In the meantime, just clear out the trash mob so you don't have to worry about anything anything when Jaina finally does appear. This fight is going to be significantly easier than the Baine one if you get so lucky. Jaina's going to use primarily a lot of basic mage spells that are slightly altered to make them more powerful. Pyroblast is going to be her primary attack, though it can't be interrupted like normal, so you're going to need to prioritize healing the tank to avoid them getting bursted down. Jaina will throw a flare core on the ground, which will slowly grow in size before exploding. The core will explode early if touched by a player, damaging everyone nearby, but it does about twice the damage that it would otherwise. The thing is that if the core explodes unprovoked, it deals damage to everyone regardless of how far away they are. Depending on your party's composition, you might be able to use up a Divine Shield or another invincibility buff to just run into the core that way. I'll leave the specifics up to your discretion, however. The final bit is that Jaina will blink away periodically and then blast out 3 blades of ice in a cone in front of her. These will damage and stun anyone hit by them, so I'd recommend waiting for a moment after she blinks so you can more easily avoid these projectiles. They don't move very fast and have smaller hitboxes, so you shouldn't have any excuses in this case. Despite her story developments in more recent times, Sylvanas has always had some piece of herself devoted to her people, the Forsaken. With that all but taken away from her, the Banshee Queen now wanders the wastelands surrounding the Ruby Dragon Shrine, attacking anything living that happens to cross her path. Given her developments as of late, we might even be able to read deeper into what's happened here to deal with the troubles our Sylvanas has created back home. Like I just said, Sylvanas resides within the Ruby Dragon Shrine, which is extremely ironic, but I digress. This fight is relatively simple with a lot of ground-based attacks going on. Just spread out to avoid these and avoid getting your party members caught in the mess as well. As for the actual mechanic you'll want to look out for, it's called Culling of the Highborn. Sylvanas will summon 8 ghouls in a circle around herself, pull all players underneath her, and call the ghouls forward. You'll need to kill as many of these ghouls as you can before they reach the boss, unless you want to die in a single shot. Each one that survives deals a massive amount of AoE damage to just about everyone, so this is really going to be a test for your focus fire skills as a group. In the darkest of times and bleakest of fates, it's not hard to see why many would be willing to abandon their faith. After everything she once held dear was ripped out of existence, this echo of Tyrande Whisperwind was left to sulk without the warmth of Elune's light to embrace her. It's almost impossible to expect anything coming out of this particular foe, considering that we've never seen what she would do without the Moon Goddess's powers at her side. This fight is probably one of the harder encounters for this instance, just because of how many abilities you'll have to micromanage throughout its duration. When first arriving at the Emerald Dragon Shrine, you'll notice everything is covered in a veil of shadows. Just walk forward and start attacking the trash mobs, which will cause a pool of moonlight to shine down. Kite the adds in the surrounding area to the moonlight to weaken them, ultimately clearing everything out besides the boss herself. Once the boss fight starts officially, there are a few things you want to look out for, the first of which is called Stardust. This ability will do a fair bit of AoE damage to everyone if not interrupted. Thankfully, it's the only thing you'll have to interrupt for this fight, so get on that. Tyrande will also cast Moonlance, which will create a fast-moving beam of light that will eventually split off into 3 prongs. This stuns anyone caught in it for a few seconds, so just be wary of which direction this thing is headed in. You'd have enough to worry about here without losing control of your character. At 85 and 55% health, Tyrande will gain a casting speed buff that makes all of this hell a lot harder to deal with, as well as unlocking a new ability each time she gains a new stack of this. The first stack gives her the ability to summon Eyes of the Goddess, which are little orbs that circle around the little pond Tyrande is standing in. These silence and damage anyone caught close by, so casters will want to be careful of that. What makes this such a pain in the ass is that casters are more or less forced to stand at the perimeter of the pond anyways, because the beam of moonlight surrounding the boss slows players' casting time significantly. So just be wary about your positioning once the eyes start spawning, otherwise things can get hairy real fast. The second new ability is called Tears of Elune, which is just your standard Rain of Fire based ability, which does a whole shit ton of damage if you're caught in any of these fireballs raining down. These don't officially start raining down until 30% health and will continue until the boss is killed. So this is the point where you want to pop all of your cooldowns and burst Tyrande down. It is said that when the dragon aspects were given their respective powers from the Titan Keepers, Nosdormu was given a vision of his own demise, meant as a humbling experience to help the aspect of time realize that even he was not above that which he governed. Unfortunately, the old gods have ways of seeding dark thoughts on weakened minds, for which they eventually did with Nosdormu. Showing the bronze dragon aspect a potential path where he can be immortal, he will eventually succumb to madness, shattering the timelines, ultimately creating the Infinite Dragonflight as we know it today. And so, in order to complete the cycle, we must aid Nozdormu in ending his future self, giving him the death he has always foreseen. Upon making your way to the Bronze Dragon Shrine, you want to make sure to take out all of the adds standing around. This boss fight will require a lot of moving around on your part, and it's just so much easier when you don't have to worry about extra aggro. The fight itself has a few basic mechanics, and one that most people never bothered to learn back in the day. Thankfully, it's rather simple, so pay close attention, and you just might prove useful when Cataclysm Time Walking comes back around. Murozond has a breath ability, so the tank will need to face him away from the rest of the group. You'll also want to look out for Distortion Bombs that the boss will throw at a random player, creating a pool of damage when they explode. These will clog up the fighting area over time, so try to stack them as close as you can. And that's where the special mechanic comes in. You see the giant hourglass in the center of the Dragon Shrine? It resets the players' health, mana, and cooldowns to what they were at the beginning of the fights. Pretty cool, right? The only thing is that this ability can only be used 5 times throughout the fight. Normally you won't need it more than 2 or 3 times, but just don't waste your charges. These resets are extremely valuable for obvious reasons, and it's almost impossible to beat this encounter without using them correctly. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. Links to my social media and whatnot are in the description below, and as for the comment question, this is going to be about wild speculation more than anything else, but I figured it might be fun. Why do you think the forces of Azeroth failed to stop Deathwing in this particular timeline? Excluding that they were unable to defeat Murozond as we just did, I'd rather consider events that would be seemingly smaller, but would have a larger impact compared to succeeding or failing in the exact task related to this specific dungeon. Anyways, that's all the time I've got for today, so until next time, don't die.